guys, welcome back to the channel. Bean here, and we're going to be moving on to my anticipated releases for 2020. Now, the way that I have this kind of set out is that I'm going to start with the sequels that come out next year, which are a full page long. So grab something to drink and grab a snack, pop a squat, and we're going to get right into it right away. So the first two books I'm going to talk about are actually books that do not have release dates as of now. One of them doesn't even have a full title, so I'm a little curious as to if it's actually coming out or not. The first one is Tales from the Hinterland by Melissa Albert. Now this one we just realized came out, and since we are pre-filming some of these videos, we did just finish reading The Hazelwood for our book of the month for October. And so we're all kind of in a Hazelwood type of mood, and realizing that the collection of stories comes out is actually very exciting because we can actually learn the stories of some of these characters. The second book that does not have a release date is the sequel to Tempest and Slaughter by Tamora Pierce, which is the second book in the Muir Chronicles. It doesn't have a title yet, so I'm not sure what's going on here. It doesn't have a release date. It just says 2020. Now, we've been kind of waiting for this one to come out. It was supposed to come out in 2019, and we never got anything about it, so I'm not exactly sure what's going on there. So, Tamora Pierce, please, I would like to finish this series. I know it's just a duology, but I'd really like it now. So for the rest of these sequels, I am going to go through by the date they are released, starting with January, and I'll also let you know which book in the series they are. The first date I'm going to work on is January 7th, because I have 3 books coming out that day that I am looking forward to. The first one is The Secret Chapter by Genevieve Cogman. This is the 6th book in the Invisible Library series, which I have been following, and I absolutely love it. The next book is Come Tumbling Down by Rashani and McGuire. This is the 5th book in the Wayward Children series, and these covers just keep getting prettier and prettier, I swear. They really do. And the last one that comes out on January 7th is The Night Country by Melissa Albert, the sequel to The Hazelwood. I'm a little anxious about what's going to happen in this one. I was perfectly fine with the ending to The Hazelwood, so we'll see how this one goes. The next date I will be moving on to is January 14th, when The Conference of Birds by Ransom is coming out. This is the 5th book in his Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, which I have read some of. I haven't caught up fully yet, but I do have the first 4, and I really just love how strange and out there these books are. They're really quite a fun read. Moving on to January 21st, The Hand on the Wall by Maureen is coming out. This is the 3rd book in the Truly Devious series, and I am very excited to continue on with this mystery series. I do not have any sequels right now in February that I have listed here, but I am sure that there are some that I'm going to be excited about that I just haven't put on my list as of right now. But I will be moving on to March, and the first date I have is March 17th, when The Electric Heir by Victoria Lee comes out. This is the sequel to The Fever King, which is a post-apocalyptic sort of world where magic is actually a disease that goes around and it kills most people that it comes in contact with, except for our main characters. So I really loved the first one, and it left us on such a cliffhanger that I really want to know what happens to all of my dear little cinnamon rolls in this book. The next date that I'm moving on to is April 7th, when Ruthless Gods comes out. This is by Emily A. Duncan. This is the sequel to The Wicked Saints, and I really did enjoy Wicked Saints. I did listen to the audiobook for most of it just because of some of the names were a bit long and I couldn't read what they were saying, so they were turning to gibberish in my mind. But I am looking forward to seeing where this story goes. The next date will be April 21st, when Shorefall comes out, which is by Robert Jackson Bennett. Now, this is a series that I read back when I worked at the bookstore. The first book came out, and I read it in about 2 days. But this book has been pushed 4 times now. So if it gets pushed again, I am going to have some issues, and I am going to probably throw a fit at people. So I hope it doesn't get pushed. Originally, it was supposed to come out last year in like June, and then they pushed it to December, and then they pushed it to January, and now it's in April. So it better come out in April or I'm going to have problems. I'm probably going to have to reread it because it's been so long since I read the first one now. I'm not sour at all. The next month I'm moving on to is going to be June, and the first date is June 2nd. Heir the 9th is coming out by Tamsyn Muir. This is the sequel to Gideon the Ninth, which I just finished in October and absolutely loved. And that ending, broke my heart, but I am so excited to see what happens with Harrowhawk and where she ends up going from this. Moving on to July, on July 16th, The Fires of Vengeance comes out by Evan Winters. This is the sequel to The Rage of Dragons, which I read this past year and absolutely loved, and I am very excited to see. This is an African-American inspired fantasy story that has dragons and a woman who speaks to dragons. I mean, and lots of fighting, and it was a great time. It really was just a great time. The last sequel that I'm going to talk about today is The Silvered Serpents by Rashani. This one actually doesn't come out until September, and I'm really sour about it. There isn't a cover yet, but I want it. Thank you. Moving on, I'm going to go month by month now through some of the standalones as well as the first books in the series that I am also looking forward to. I only really went through March, and then I have one in April and one in May, so my list will be a little bit shorter, but there's still a solid several here. So, and I tried not to go through lots of the ones that the other girls did, just because I know you've heard a lot about some of them, and I try to read books that aren't quite as mainstream. That's just kind of how I am. All right, we'll get started with January, and the first book I'm going to talk about is Lady Hotspur by Tessa Gratton. This book comes out on the 7th of January, and it is a retelling of Shakespeare's Henry IV. Now, this one is kind of a companion novel, so it's not a sequel, but it is written by the same author who wrote The Queens of Innis Lear. So this will be very interesting. I love these covers, and I'm very excited to read these books. Moving on to the 28th of January, there are two books that I'm looking forward to. The first one is High Fire by Eowyn Colfer. Now, this book is a novel about, and this is really what sold it for me, is about, and I quote here, a vodka-drinking, flash dance-loving dragon who is the last of his kind and lives in the bayou of Louisiana. So it does sound a little bit all over the place, but I'm still very excited because it sounds absolutely hilarious. And the second book that comes out on the 28th of January that I'm looking forward to is When We Were Vikings by Andrew David MacDonald. Now, this book follows a brother and a sister. Her name is Zelda, and she is a Viking enthusiast, like historical Vikings. And her brother live alone, and he has recently decided to take on some less than legal means of making money for themselves, so she decides to take it into her own hands to try and find a better way for them to make money and to become, and to be able to live on their own. So I do think that'll be interesting. The cover is very pretty as well, so, and the main character's name is Zelda, which is pretty awesome, I'm not gonna lie. Moving on to the month of February, I'm going to start with February 4th, where I have two books coming out on February 4th that I'm looking forward to. The first one is The Queen's Assassin by Melissa de la Cruz. Now, this is the first book in a new series by her, and it follows an assassin and an assassin's apprentice who are forced to become a team and go on a quest together to attempt to save their kingdom. I didn't follow a lot more after that, but I do love Melissa de la Cruz, and I am an assassin person, so I like assassin books, and that's about all I got there. The next one that comes out on the 4th that I'm looking forward to is called Belle Revolute by Lindsay Miller, and now Lindsay Miller is one of my favorite authors. I read her Mask of Shadows series and absolutely loved it. Now, this story is kind of a Princess and the Pauper retelling of sorts. It takes place in a magical kingdom where the princess has magical abilities, but she really just wants to be a physician, whereas another girl who is overworked by her family really just wants to learn magic in order to help people. And so these two switch spots, and the princess is able to use her magic in order to help her people and become a doctor, whereas the other girl goes and becomes a lady learning the basics of magic, and they end up having to work together throughout the time in order to save the kingdom, per usual. But I still think it's quite interesting, and I'll read whatever Lindsay Miller writes. So the next book that I am going to talk about here is actually a short story collection, and this one comes out on February 11th, It's called And I Do Not Forgive You, Stories and Other Revenges by Amber Sparks. And now this is a feminism-fueled fantasy collection, which caught me right there. I do love short stories. They're great, especially as bedtime reads, because I can read one short story like each night, and then I get through the whole book and I don't have to rush and it's a lot easier to keep each story straight in my head at that point. The last date I'm going to talk about in February is February 21st, where there are 2 books I'm looking forward to coming out. The first one is The Shadows Between Us by Trisha Levenseller. When we went and saw her live down in Milwaukee, she actually read the first chapter of this book out loud to us, and it was amazing, and I'm so excited to read this. It is advertised as a Slytherin love story where the main character basically marries a prince in order to kill him so she can get his kingdom, which is pretty awesome. We really can't... You want to take a cliche and spin it around? There you go. So I'm very much looking forward to that one. The second one that comes out on the 21st is Master of Sorrows by Justin Travis Call. Now this book is interesting. It is your traditional chosen one trope, but the chosen one turns out to be the reincarnation of an evil god. So it's all about whether or not he's actually going to save everybody or if he's going to just kill everybody, because who knows? And so I'm intrigued. I think the cover is really quite pretty, and I'm very excited for that. Moving on to the month of March, I have 2 books down, and the first one is going to come out on March 3rd, and that is called We Ride Upon Sticks by Quan Berry. This one actually caught my attention because it is a field hockey book, and I used to play field hockey, so I do get into that, and you hardly ever see field hockey in any sort of writing anywhere. But this one follows a team of field hockey players who, it turns out, majority of them are descendants of the women who were put on trial as Salem witches. And then it turns out their new assistant coach or head coach, I can't remember which one, is actually a descendant of one of the persecutors who accused women of being witches. And so it's a bit of a twist on that, and I'm quite excited to read that one. The next book in March that I have on my list will be coming out on March 10th, and that is Harley in the Sky by Akemi Dawn Bowman. And this one is a circus story about a girl named Harley who leaves her family circus after getting into a huge fight with her parents and ends up joining a rival circus, and then has to figure out her own life and what she's looking for from it. Got 2 books left, guys. I'm almost there. Moving on to April, one of my biggest anticipated releases is After She Wrote Him by Susan Gentile. Now, this is a story that follows an author who gets lost in writing one of her main characters and basically writes him into existence. And the last one I'm going to talk about comes out in May, on May 28th, and it is called The Stray Cats of Homs by Eva Nour, N-O-U-R, I cannot say things. And this book follows Sammy, who lives in Syria, whose country is warring with itself in a civil war, and basically he attempts to live a normal life, going to school, living with family. They have all of these pets, including apparently a turtle on the roof, which... cool. And then all of a sudden he is conscripted into the military and forced to become an apprentice map maker. And it follows him as he attempts to just get back home and wants to have nothing to do with this war. So that's where I'm going to stop for now. There will be many more books, and we will still have our anticipated reads coming out each month, but these are some of the books that are high up on my list for the upcoming year. So if you enjoyed this video, feel free to subscribe right now. Since it is Bookmas, we are posting videos every day and through the 24th, I believe, of December. And so be on the lookout for more of those. Otherwise, we will be back after the end of the year, back in January, because we need a little break after this. This is a lot of videos to film. So feel free to subscribe and like our videos, and all of our Instagram as well as our Goodreads handles are going to be listed down below. We spend a lot of time on both of those sites, and we will see you guys next time. Bye!